guys, just reading this giant Ingmar Bergman book here. It's probably the biggest book I got here. Welcome to the Day for Night film podcast arena. Tonight, we're going to just talk about one movie, and it'll be maybe a little more focused. Sometimes I get all over the place, but that's okay. Katerina picked this movie, and it's Ingmar Bergman's Persona. It's one of the best movies ever, and I actually know this one pretty well, so I can hopefully have some stuff to say about it, because lately people have been picking the movies, and I'm trying to get them to pick things I haven't seen. So yeah, welcome star of the screen and stage, Katerina Eichenberger.
Eichenberger, you're close.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh my. Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you picked this one on your very own.
I did.
Sometimes I go back and forth with people, and I'm like, don't want to talk about that one. But this is one of my favorites. I think I said maybe something else at first, and then we decided to do it.
Yeah, you did. Cause I think you were like, you had mentioned it or something, but somehow I got you to go back to it. So I'm glad.
Well, the first episode we did is like Three Women by Robert Altman, which is like a sister film. Have you seen it?
I haven't. Altman's great. It doesn't have anything to do with like Three Sisters. Check out it.
It's like a very similar story, and he like talked about how it was like really inspired by Persona, and they also both wrote them when they were in the hospital, which was weird because Bergman wrote Persona when he was in the hospital.
Yeah, I did know that. I didn't know that about Altman. Do you remember why Bergman was in the hospital? Because I don't remember.
Liv Ullmann always says that whenever he was like feeling overwhelmed and didn't want to make a movie, he would put himself in the hospital, and I trust her. I think the first time I met you, I went on and on about how I think I'll put this on tape, that I think Liv Ullmann is the greatest living actor, period. And I don't mean best European. I don't mean best woman. I mean, I think she's like the greatest actor that we have on the planet at the moment.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a very fair statement. I have some others I love too, but
yeah, I just have a special affinity for her work because she's done so much, and I don't know, she expresses so much in this film without talking, which is like pretty hard to do. I want to get into the movie because there's a lot to go over in 30 minutes. But what's the very first movie you ever saw in your life?
The first movie I've ever seen in my life?
Yeah, like when you were a kid or baby.
Oh my God.
Do you remember?
I have no idea.
Do you remember going to the theater for the first time?
I don't remember the first time I went to a movie theater, which sounds crazy. I know the movies that were impacted me the most as a kid, which would be The Sound of Music and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. We had those on VHS, and I watched those all the time. And that was very like kid, like Sound of Music, I know like the back of my hand. And then also, there was a lot of Bambi. And then I really moved up, and then I got into Titanic. That was like my big coming
of age. Yeah, you must have been, no, I figured most people remember like the very first time they went to a theater, but I guess you don't.
You think? I have no memory. Like, considering I'm in this industry, I feel like I should remember that, but I don't at all.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah. My copy, I want to talk to you about why you picked this, but my copy is the hideous MGM version.
Oh yeah, I must say it's not the best.
No, it's got like Criterion, and
I think we have a Criterion version.
Yeah, there's a bunch of really great versions. And this one's hideous. It's bald. It's awful.
Really bad.
So yeah, you want to talk about why you picked this one and when you first saw it and why you love it?
I had seen Persona a few years ago for the first time, but then I rewatched it, I'd say like a couple months ago. And I've been on a Bergman kick in general, and we had watched I forget the name, but Howl of the Wolf, something with Howl.
Hour of the Wolf.
Hour of the Wolf. So I watched that recently, and then I watched Seventh Seal, and then went back to Persona. Oh, and then Fanny Alexander, and then went back to Persona. And I just feel like in a lot of ways, it's like the perfect film. It reminds me of theater, and it's just like a masterclass in acting as well. So I feel like when I was thinking of movies to talk about, I was like, one, I think you would enjoy talking about it. And two, I just feel like there's a lot to unpack. And I figured, why not try to unpack it for 30 minutes with you?
Yeah, it's my the way I came to it was I've actually never seen Fanny and Alexander, and I'm a huge Bergman fan, but he's got a massive body of work.
I know so
Um,
much. There's still so much I haven't seen, but Fanny Alexander was such a surprise. Like I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is Bergman, but at the same time, it makes sense. It's such a good holiday movie. I really recommend watching it around the holidays.
yeah, I'll get to it this year. I need to. So my sort of relationship with Bergman, I've told this on the show, but like when I first got into films, it was like the typical kind of guy who sees like Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and all those kind of Pulp Fiction,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh man, movies are cool. And I knew Woody Allen like loved Ingmar Bergman, and I knew most of the guys loved loved Ingmar Bergman, and I would always see the seventh. I'm like 3 years older than you probably, maybe a
Yeah,
couple more.
that's it. Maybe 2 years.
And I would always see the VHS of Seventh Seal, and the box was so cool. But I was like, oh, I don't think I'm like emotionally like ready for this. I think I'm gonna watch Dumb and Dumber again. I'd always like want to watch something funny because I was afraid it was gonna be like just too much, like too heavy for me. Because I don't like super heavy movies. I've talked to you about it. How I'm not
Yeah.
crazy about like, Lars von Trier, Michael Haneke, any
Oh,
filmmaker that's
I
like
love those two.
I know. There's exceptions. I mean, I liked the last Haneke movie I saw, but it like overall, I
Yeah.
call them like joyless movies, and there's several I don't like. But but I rented Seventh Seal finally, and I was like, I'm just gonna watch it, and it's like so funny. Like I didn't
It
realize it
really
was gonna be
is.
funny. So then I just did that deep. He was the first like of the Europeans I got into before I saw Fellini or Buñuel, probably Godard. Probably he was probably like one of the first. And then so like I started going through like Wild Strawberries, and then I saw this one, and so it came out around the same time, like a couple years. It was about 7 years after Breathless, and the whole at the
Yeah,
peak of the French New Wave,
exactly.
and
It's like
there's a obvious like
16
sort
years.
of influence because before that he had kind of, I mean, he wasn't doing realism all the time, but I was looking. The movie right before this was, I believe, The Silence, and then All These Women, which I've never seen. The
I know.
Silence. Have you seen that one? The Silence.
No.
That's one of my favorites. This is
Okay.
kind of like sometimes tied. It's a hotel movie. Anyway,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm gonna
I
look it
saw
up.
this. So what?
I'm looking it up so I can remember it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's also uh, no, BB Anderson's not in that. I'm trying to think. Maybe she is. I'm blanking on the two actresses in it. Anyway, it's really good. But that's kind of how I came to it. I loved it. I think I watched it 2 times in a row, which I don't do very
Oh,
often.
yeah. That's a good.
It's really short.
It
It,
is. It's not
it's
too
like
long.
80 minutes. But yeah, how did you like get into Bergman? Was it just through like
I
somebody telling you about him?
Yeah, I mean, I'd heard of just being, in acting school, you kind of come across some of the main filmmakers. So I knew of him because of, I think, just being in acting school. And then my fiance and I, during the pandemic, like really, it was great. I mean, it was not great. The pandemic, still not great. But what was great was with the time, we used it and watched a lot of really like dove into European cinema, I think, mainly. And so I think I'd probably seen one thing by Bergman, and then we just dove in, and I started to watch a lot more. And I love his work, and I think he's he was always pushing the medium to the next level. Like he never kind of like did something and then did the same thing. I think he did for a little bit, but then he just was always trying to reach for the next thing. And I think Fanny Alexander even is just like watching, you're just like, oh, you have learned how to grow as an artist and you're constantly pushing yourself and using like what's happening in the industry and taking that, using it, and then even taking it a step further. And so I've just like loved watching his films and also Out of Order and then seeing how are they influenced by what's happening in the world and what's going on. How is he taking it to the next step? And like, because I think what was so surprising is just seeing his work in color for like Fanny Alexander was
Oh yeah.
like out of that already felt so different. Because he was making a choice at that point, you know, he really could have kept doing it in black and white. He didn't have to use color. And it was this big production. And so I felt like with Persona, he was taking the French New Wave and taking it a step further. And there was like a theatrical element. And he just grabbed two amazing actors and you just could watch them the whole time. It's
really, you know, and it's been linked to like David Lynch and all these people because it was so drastically different than anything else that was out in the mid to late 60s. Because this was like during the era of, I mean, Godard and was experimenting, and a lot of directors were being really experimental, but it was more in technique and not as much in storytelling. Like you know, Weekend and Breathless and Alphaville and all those Godard movies, the narratives are pretty simple.
Very simple.
Like a gangster.
Character studies, not plot-driven films.
No, and then this isn't plot-driven either, but this one's experimental in like a lot of ways. It goes against the show don't tell. It's like the opposite. The entire thing is tell don't show, and which like flips sort of like something they tell you a lot to do in screenwriting and stuff. And
also, it's still subtextual, even with the text he chooses to use. He's not like handing you anything. Obviously, you have to figure it out still, even with the text that he includes in it.
Yeah, like for people that are watching and haven't seen it, so it stars Bibi Andersson, another fantastic actress, and Liv Ullmann. It's kind of like you know, standing on the you know, it's like two giants. I mean, and Liv Ullmann is a like a theater and film actress, and she decides she's just not going to talk anymore, and she has a bit of a breakdown, and they send Bibi Ullmann, Bibi Andersson as her nurse to kind of take care of her. So basically, one of them never shuts up, and the other one doesn't speak. And it sounds like, how would that be captivating? And it's for 85 minutes, like you cannot turn away. And other characters come in, a couple, and there's things that happen. But their relationship, that's why, like you said, I remember the first time we met to talk about a script, I told you, I was like, oh, this is my, like, I tell people that want to make movies to watch Persona and study Persona. There's a lot of movies to study. I mean, there's American stuff, of course, like Casablanca and Citizen Kane. People tell you to watch that stuff, and those are all great. But if you want to learn how to like write, deconstruct this script, because it's insane how much exposition is told without exposition, and like it's all through one voice. And Liv has the like daunting job of just reacting constantly, like, and she doesn't overdo it. You know, it's like everything is told through like posture and looks, and it's amazing. I will say it breaks the mold of like almost every one of my favorite movies has some pretty funny stuff in it. I don't think there's anything funny in this movie, but
I would say the opening. The opening's pretty. I would say like the opening there's a lot of comedic moments. The cartoon. I think like the cartoon's like touching her boobs or something. It's very. It's what's the word? This is not the right word, but antagonizing comes to mind. But like
confrontational,
kind of, but also like it is like I remember seeing the opening and kind of laughing, and then it becomes dark and serious. And there are uncomfortable moments that are done very well in a way that doesn't feel. I mean, it's obviously a darker film, but I think it's not depressing necessarily. It's like an exploration of like self and who are we and the fractured self and being a woman and like primal needs versus emotional needs. I think it's such a good film, but I do think the opening's kind of funny. I think there are like comedic elements to that opening.
Yeah, I guess I'll concede with that. I just mean once it picks up with the characters, there's not really much levity in it. There's just like, I mean, I always laugh when she steps on the glass and cuts her foot. because she's trying to get BB is trying to. I need to call them by the character names, but I never do that. BB
Right,
Anderson trying to get like a reaction out of her, so she breaks a
right.
glass and puts it. And when she steps it, she's like, "Oh!" And then like she kind of like has a little face of elation. That part always makes me happy.
Yeah. I mean, he does such a good job with, I forgot about this scene, but I was thinking about the Buddhist monk scene where on the
Oh yeah,
TV and he's burning himself alive. And I figure we can say spoilers or just talk about the film fully.
yeah.
I'm
Why
going
not?
to, so don't be a, don't listen on if you don't want to get spoilers. But um, I just thought that it was a great moment because it was something I wasn't thinking about of like the era, and also this photo. I'll quickly pause on that thought, but this photo is great because something else I was wanted to talk about was like how I feel like this is just constantly breaking the fourth wall and like trying to understand: are you a viewer? Or are you a part of the story? Um,
Right.
I think he does such a good job of that in this film. Of like she's taking a photo at the at the camera that we're observing. It feels like there are often shots where you're following the characters, so you feel like you're intruding on this private space, on these private moments. And then at the opening too, when they have the boy touching the screen, it just feels like, yeah, these women are never alone, which I thought is really interesting how he does that. But anyway, back to the burning monk. Um,
Mhm.
I love that because I read something about how it was the emotional response to television and how like you're suddenly inundated with all of this information and this news and how that affects like the human psyche and like emotion and all of that kind of stuff. And I feel like 1966 was the year when like television and news was really building up, into like Vietnam War and understanding like what was happening in the world and having to see it. And I was like, I wonder how that scene would change now because of how much we see on the news. Whereas I feel like then it was still surprising and still shocking because it was so new, and how different that scene might be, and like how different it would land if someone saw that and didn't react, because the gut reaction is to react because it's such a horrific thing. But I feel like now our generation, this time, we've seen that so much that suddenly those images don't have the same impact, maybe.
Yep.
Um, but I was just thinking about how like that was such a specific moment in time and how that still exists, but we're just seeing it so much more that I don't think people react as much to news
Yeah,
like that.
for sure. Yeah, that the whole section you're talking about, the movie is sort of sandwiched with it starts with like a projector bulb lighting and film running through. Again, it's like a nod to the new wave of saying like this is a film. And
This,
that was like what they wanted, like Godard and Bresson, or yeah, what's his name? Yeah, Bresson and all those guys. They wanted that's not who I mean. Oh well, Don, one of the cashier to cinema guys. It's like
yeah,
Truffaut, Godard, and the writer guy. I can't think of his name. But anyway, they wanted like you to be aware that you're watching a movie constantly, and that, and like, yeah, there's three sort of sections. I think there's three sections in the film that do that, that like break it up. Um, I know there's different readings of the movie. A lot of people think that even though they're not necessarily the same person, it's about how we have persona, and now it's really poignant with like social media because like you present yourself a certain way, and so a lot of people read the film as like one of them is the true person in her inner self and the other one's her outer self, which I find interesting. But I'm never super interested in like deep analysis of like the psychology. I'm more just like taking it in the first few times, and just like, yeah, no matter how you read it, it's just some movies can be a slog. I think this movie is really entertaining, and I think like people maybe that aren't super into this kind of stuff might like it. I don't know how you can. Uh,
also visually stunning. I mean, the
it's
use
so
of like
beautiful.
light and shadow and texture because of the translucent curtains like you see in this shot, and like even her structure right now it's just so visually delicious, I feel like. and
It's
all of it, like the way they block everybody. It's just every shot is so strong and specific.
I always kind of compare it to like a Leonard Cohen song, meaning like his first few albums, where it's presented with simplicity, like verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Like if you take away the experimental bits of this movie, you're left with just like a magnificently shot black and white movie with a few people. But it's not simple. Like the more you listen to Cohen, the lyrics are just like deeper and deeper and deeper. And the older you get with his songs, like the more you glean from them. But like, yeah, same way with this film. Like you can take it as a pretty simple story, and yeah, the more you like peel it back, and the more you watch it, and the more you like take it in. It's really something. It's a point in his career too. I want to talk about. You were talking about his career, so he started directing in the early 40s, and his first few movies aren't very good. I've seen a lot of his movies.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree. I watched, what was it?
Port of Call, or maybe, or
It
Woman.
might have been Summer Interlude.
Oh, that okay. So that's the one I was gonna say that I love. That's like his breakthrough. That's the one
Oh,
where
no, that's not it then. That I'm looking, that wasn't it. I'm gonna figure it out.
that's 51. Before that, it's like While the City Sleeps, To Joy, Prison, Eva, Port of Call. There's a bunch of them. Crisis, that's a big one. That one's not very good. Torment, those aren't very good, I don't think. And I mean, they're fine. They're fine movies. But I think if you see them before you see any other Bergman, you're like, this is a good foreign director, you know. But once he gets Summer Interlude, that's when it like starts popping. And that one to me is really unique and interesting. And then he's got a few more. You got Summer with Monica, which is like a really big one. And Smiles of a Summer Night's the one I'm not fond of. It's like
That's the one I saw. That was the one I was gonna mention,
it's
was I
supposed to
saw.
be it's supposed to be a comedy, but I don't think it really works. I don't think he's best when he's trying to be really funny.
It felt like Shakespeare to me. So I think there was success in it, but I was like, "Oh, this is Bergman." I couldn't believe it. I was, like, so surprised. I remember just being like, "This just feels like a Shakespeare play." Whereas
Yeah,
a lot of times it's not always, like, hysterically funny. Some can be brilliant, but they're just, like, they were funny at a time, and now in our generation, that's not as, like,
yeah.
I
I mean,
love it
I think
forever.
his Seventh Seal is way funnier. But then then he had, he famously knocked out Seventh Seal and Wild Strawberries in the same year, back to back, which is insane. But
Insane.
then the era we're at is where I think he was just on a roll because he did Through a Glass Darkly, Winter Light, The Silence, Persona, Hour of the Wolf, um, like all in a row. And then Shame, which I'm not a fan of. That one
I have
just like
not seen Shame.
it's like the most upsetting of his movies that I've ever
Mhm.
seen. Um, but I mean, I'm sure it's good. It's just like it was so dark and oppressive that it was like
Yeah.
um, it was hard for me. I'll tell you what some people think of Persona. I don't want
Yeah.
to get too off track, but this is fun. These are some one-star reviews from Amazon. Uh,
Okay.
this one says, "I'll read this. I'll read this one second because it segues into the next part." I hate this movie. I really hate it. I love artful and metaphorical movies, but this film is made to piss you off, and it super pissed me off. Like really. So congrats, Ingmar Bergman. Mission accomplished. I'm pissed off. Also, be forewarned. There's disturbing images in the opening. Really disturbing. Still pissed. You should watch Tarkovsky movies instead. And then the second one says, my husband and I are usually will enjoy an international film, but the presentation of an erection and a man having a nail driven through his hand in the first minutes was with zero context was too much for me. Not our idea of entertainment. It did not enlighten or delight us.
Oh my
Um,
god.
so that leads into the famous 7-minute monologue. I think I've told you this before. Probably because I grew up with a really conservative mother. I
Mhm.
don't really like sexuality in movies too much, and I'm
Yes,
not
you said
prude.
that.
I just like I don't know. I don't. I'm Freudianly pulling my shirt closed, as
Yeah,
I say.
you're like, "I can't handle it."
I don't
Not
know.
you know,
I don't mind when it's
always amazing you come to our shows.
say what? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Your shows are racy, but I'm not crazy about I mean, it's not across the board, but this film has an interesting scene that's a 7-minute monologue a lot of her just like explaining a sexual experience she had, while Alma just sits there and smokes her cigarettes and doesn't move, and
Yeah.
meanwhile she's slinking in her seat and getting drunk. And then, sort of like Mulholland Drive, it just kind of like dissolves to them in bed together, and
Yeah.
it's very like we don't know what happened. And a lot of people say that the entire fantasy she's making up on the spot, because she starts describing hats that they wore earlier. She was like, I was on the beach and I wore that. She wore this big hat, and like she's describing like Alma, and. But anyway, do you have anything on that?
Well, I guess I've always been one, I didn't ever have the theory that she was making it up on the spot. I think she does such a brilliant job with that monologue, I have to say, because it's long text. It is, it's not comfortable. It's weird. It's strange.
And she's
Um,
playing it drunk.
she's just playing it in a way that's like, yeah, just I thought she did such a brilliant job with it. I guess I was always of the mind of like, though they might be two people, I really think there's an exploration of them being the same person. Like, I think that for me made sense. And I feel like in that moment, that's when the hat, for me, the hat was like, because she has that hat, because it's her hat as it is. Like in the movie, it's Elizabeth and Alma, and I'm like, Alma was talking about that hat because it's her hat. It's Elizabeth's hat is her hat, and that was the idea I had, was that they are the same person. This is their shared history. And so now things are blurring the lines of like, what is Alma's and what is Elizabeth's. And that was just mine because I thought that, I liked that idea. But
That's
I
it.
think there's so many open, perspectives to it.
Well,
But that
yeah,
was
he's a good writer, and so there's not like an answer. Um,
exactly, yeah.
I
It's
will
how we
say
interpret it.
an interesting thing about a scene, I think after that is where the one of the, what's her name's husband comes in, played by Gunnar. What's his face? The guy that's in all of his movies.
Right, right.
What's
I
his
don't remember
name?
his name.
Oh, Gunnar Bornstrand, the guy that's
Oh,
in all
that's
of the.
great.
And then he like he's blind. He just happens to be blind, which works out. And then he ends up making sweet whoopee with the other one, but like to trick her. And there's a scene kind of like that in Three Women, but it's that's why I want you to watch it, because
Yeah.
there's so many mirrored scenes. But yeah, man, this movie is just, there's so much. I wish we had like 2 hours to talk about it, but
I know. It's one of those things that you could just dive in for hours and hours, and it's just like, yeah, God, that's a great shot,
yeah,
honestly.
that's Sven Schrigsler, his cinematographer, and him working on a
Yeah.
shot there with BB and her iconic sunglasses.
Oh, those are so good.
Ray-Ban or some Swedish company put out those glasses not too long ago.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah, somebody once asked me if I could own any piece of film or like memorabilia, like a red slipper from Wizard of Oz or whatever, and it would be Marcello Mastrione's glasses and her glasses, like his glasses from either 8.5 or Dolce Vita. And
Either are perfect.
I'd like to have glasses. That's all I want. Her glasses are so cool in that.
Oh, they're so cool. Yeah, no, they're
Did
both
you happen to see last year when you guys were locked down? Did you
yeah.
see that movie? I think it's called Searching for Bergman or something like that. It's by a newer woman director. Um,
Urban Island?
well, there's a documentary. Is that what it is? Is that what?
Oh, it's not a documentary. No, no, no. I watched like a narrative film called Bergman Island.
Yeah, that's
No, I
it.
didn't.
That's it.
Oh,
Okay,
it is? Yeah.
it's confusing because there's a documentary about the Bergman Island, and then there's that movie where Tim Roth
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah. I
yeah
loved it, I have to say. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's
yeah.
not Bergman, but I enjoyed it very much.
Do you remember who directed it? Isn't it an actress that directed it?
Oh, I don't know. I do know it
Okay.
was a woman. Hold on, let me look. 'Cause uh, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. The woman, Mia.
No, it's. I think it's the first time. I know what I'm thinking. I'm getting a bunch of movies mixed up. I'm getting that Jesse Buckley movie that's similar, where they're on a island, or they're like
It's not
um.
Men, is it? The one that
No,
recently.
no, the one before that with Olivia Colman.
Oh, you're thinking of
Lost
Maggie Gyllenhaal's directorial debut. What's that called?
Lost Daughter.
Lost Daughter. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm conflating two movies.
Yeah, Bergman Island's great. Who's also a female director, but writer, but she's mainly directed, right?
Yeah, I watched them like literally back to back, and there was a lot of parallels with them.
Well, they're on the island, which was just so. I was like, oh God, I want to go there so badly.
Yeah.
Locals. So.
I guess we should go in a minute here. I'm trying to make these shows shorter because I don't know that people have good attention spans. I know I don't. So we're gonna recommend some movies to people. Yes. I picked a bunch, so I'm gonna let you go last. Okay. But yeah, thanks for coming on. So the way I know Katerina is she's an actress and one of the best. And I went to a play where everyone was great, but you were the best one. And sorry to everybody else. No, in that play I really liked you. I thought you were really good. Great. No, you guys are all great. I'm just kidding. But
great. You're such a great group of people. I'm so lucky.
No, I didn't. I'm just kidding. I shouldn't say that because you're all good. And I know a lot of those people. They were great too. I don't know. And that
I'm honored. Thank you. I'll leave it at
that. And that's how I met you. I went up and was like, "Hey, I'm Jeffrey. I did music for I don't know if I did music for that one. I've done some music for you guys."
Yeah, I don't know if you did it for that one or not.
And then I wrote you a play that you were unable to do because of timing. So I was
traveling yet again.
I know.
You did great. I'm so glad that you were able to do that, and here's a plug. Buy your play.
So yeah, it's a bunch of my stories. It's my play and other stories. It's confusing because it's got the same name. Thanks for coming to that. Yeah, actually, a minute ago when we were talking about the scene where I felt like she was making up the story about the orgy. It's not an orgy, but I have a scene in my play that in my mind, whenever she's telling her therapist the dreams, in my mind, she's just making those up off the top of her head. Mm-hmm. And that's why she becomes a storyteller, to tie me to the Ingmar Bergman. Yeah, what do you have? Do you have stuff coming out soon? Like, I know you did some movies.
Yeah, I did 2 movies last year. I don't know when they're coming out though, so I have no ability to plug those. But I was just in a short film that premiered at the Atlanta Underground, so that was fun. And I'm sure that will be like somewhere you can watch on Vimeo or something. And I was in just a quick, co-star in a show that's coming out soon. But I can't really plug anything right now, unfortunately. Okay. But I will. I'll let you know.
All right. Well, okay, my recommendations, and I know you've seen some of these. You'll have to put them up on screen. Which one you got first there, Renee? I don't remember what all I picked. Go with Zoo. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So this is a movie by Peter Greenaway. And Peter Greenaway,
amazing.
Katerina works a lot with a group in Atlanta, a theater group called Vernal and Sear. And they did a production of Louis Buñuel's Exterminating Angel with a lot of influence from Peter Greenaway, from my point of view.
That's fair, I think.
This is a film also about duality. It's about a set of twins who have wives who are both killed, and they both fall in love with the driver of the car that killed their wives. Ooh. And one of them becomes obsessed with Darwinism and the beginning of creation, and the other one gets obsessed with decay. And you know this. Do you know this movie? I feel like you know.
No, this is new to me. I'm excited.
Oh, you haven't seen this one?
No.
I thought you guys watched a lot of those for prep.
Mainly Buñuel. I watched a lot of Buñuel for prep, but I did watch some Greenaway, and obviously the famous with Helen Mirren.
The cook and the thief and the wife and her lover.
That's one of my all-time.
That's my first one. It's called A Z and Two Knots. It just says Zoo there, but it's by Peter Greenaway. It's not exactly the same, but it's about twins and duality. And then the next one I got is, I think, a shared one of ours. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
No, these are all new to me. I'm excited.
Okay, so this is
I'm gonna write
like I was talking about. I'll send it to you. Like I was talking about how Persona is not very funny. This is like the flip of that. It's like a comedy. This is about Jacques Rivette. It's called Celine and Julie Go Boating, and it's also the what they base Desperately Seeking Susan on. Interesting enough. Anyway, give this one a watch. It's really long, but it's on Vimeo, and you can break it up and watch it like a show. It's a lot of fun. The women have really great chemistry, and it's sort of a similar thing where lines start getting blurred about whether these are like, but in a fun way. And then my last one is one that you and I both like. It's called Daisies.
Yes.
by a Czech director named Vera Chilavolova. How do you say her? Do you know how to say her name?
I shouldn't even try. I'm half Croatian, so I feel like I should know, but
I think it's like Chilanova is the way I've heard it. Like, but
okay.
I'm sure there's some letters they leave out. So this movie is incredible. It's a real short movie too. It's like 70.
Mhm.
It's
Really
like
is really quick.
I think she's like the queen of like feminist cinema, and such a non. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, how would you just? This movie's anarchy. I mean, it's about these
It
two.
is. It's total surrealism, and yeah, it's revolutionary. It's wild. It's unforgivingly bright and feminine and wacky. Like it's just like, and I just feel like it's so bright. Like that's the best way to put it, both
Yeah.
visually but also structurally and energetically.
And it's like I mean, it's like all of her movies. I mean, she was like a true feminist and really great. There's a great running gag where they just keep going out with these old men, like the two of them, and then they'll let them buy them dinner, and then they all jump on a train, and then they run around and jump off, and they're like, "See ya," and then it cuts to the men crying, and they do it over and over, and it's pretty funny. Um, I love it. I think it's like great, and it's short.
Like, yeah, cause a mess everywhere.
There's what?
So they just like cause messes too. Like I feel like
they're like don't, especially in this time, you had all the men like Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton, and everyone's favorite Woody Allen, like goofy men and like bumbling men, and these were like some of the first like where women were seen like really goofy and really like, and it's kind of poking fun of like the one girl wears pigtails and acts kind of infantile, and it's kind of like a play on like men's expectations, and it's wonderful. Anyway, okay, and then the last one is yours, and I've not seen this, but I know Chantal Akerman, but I don't know this movie.
Yeah, so this movie is fantastic. I think it's 3.5 hours, so it is a commitment. I do recommend breaking it up. It is a practice on patience and time, but I always say that one of the most riveting moments in that film is when there's a moment where she's eating potatoes, and it's riveting. And I feel like peels potatoes.
Oh.
And it's riveting because Chantal Akerman just understood the assignment of like, if you're going to use a long period of time, you build tension that way. And it's also about like a woman, and I think it's about like a woman who's having her own like fractured sense of self, of like who is she, what does she want and need versus what does she have to do with the expectations of society, and like having to care for her son as a single mom. And it's a slow burn, not a lot of dialogue, so very similar to like Elizabeth's character, where she doesn't say much. She does not say much in this film, but she says everything with her physicality and actions. She actually is an actress in Buñuel's The Discreet Charm.
Yeah.
That's what she's in that main actress.
That's the poster.
Yeah, it's also a great movie. But it's such a beautiful film. And I realized there was a scene in Persona where she's also peeling. I don't know if it's a potato, but there's some vegetable or fruit she's peeling. And it's very similar. And I didn't realize that until I was thinking about both films today. And I was like, oh, there must have been some crossover. But yeah, I think it's another great film. If you like Persona, you're going to like that film. But give yourself time. Walk with the expectation of how long it's going to be, and it's slow and quiet build.
Julie and Julie go boating is kind of like that too. It's kind of like Daisies, but not as experimental with the actual craft of the film. It's shot a little more straightforward of the time because it's 1974 as Jacques Brevet, and it's really cool. But it's also cool. We've mentioned a couple of female directors because I get a lot of people ask me about. Because I can name like 30, but the average film viewer, they're like, oh, you got Catherine Bigelow, you got Sofia Coppola, that one lady that did Lady Bird, but there's like,
there's so many. And especially Andrea Arnold.
Who?
Do you know Andrea Arnold, Fish Tank?
Yeah. We just watched that. I did a George Coles episode with Fish Tank. Yeah, that was
Oh,
something else. I hadn't seen her movies.
oh, she's wonderful. She's so intense, but she's amazing.
Yeah,
Renée.
there's a lot of there's so many. I'd like to kind of like do more focus on that because
Yeah, you
I
should.
think there's a lack of exposure to a lot. And what I was saying is that period of time, 60s and 70s, Agnes Varda is a big one, which
Oh,
I'm not
Cleo
super
5 to
familiar.
7. Yeah.
I've seen that, but she's not someone I've like totally delved into. But
Yeah.
and then have you ever seen any of Eleni Mae's movies?
I don't think so.
She's in all of Woody Allen's movies, and Nichols and May. It was Mike Nichols'
Oh,
like comedian part. She directed some movies that are pretty good. But yeah, this
Claire
period's like,
Denis.
oh yeah, of course, yeah. We've talked about her on the show. I recommended Let the Sunshine In a couple weeks ago.
Okay, yeah. Also, one of my favorites though is oh, what's the famous one where he's dancing?
Beau Travail.
Beau Travail. Yeah.
Yeah, it was my favorite. Leo's Carax. Yeah, I mean with Vinnie Levant from all the Leo's Carax movies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, of course. He's so good in all those movies.
Yeah, the second episode we covered Boy Meets Girl. And we talked about Claire Denis and Denis Levant, and yeah, well, I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm sure we can come back to it
Exactly.
another day.
Yeah.
I think we covered a pretty good amount in 41 mintes and
I think
48
so
seconds.
too. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah. All right, cool. I hope I see you sooner or later when you're not
Absolutely.
constantly in the airplane.
I'm maybe in the new year. I'm like traveling every month, but every month until the end of the year. But we'll see each other. We'll make it work.
Good. All right, well, I'll see you in the green room in a second.